Okay, having a tech check here. Okay, thank you very much for coming again tonight. Some of you were here last night to meet the first candidate, Dana Miller, and tonight we're going to have you meet Andy Vollmuth. And we're going to follow the same pattern that we had last night. If you have a question and you want to ask a question, raise your hand. I will bring you a mic, and then you can ask your question on the mic, give it back to me, and we go on to the next person and after he's answered the question. Who would like to be first? There we go. She's our number one question. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. My fault. Thank you.
Harold, I was getting a little...
Time for you to introduce yourself. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is when I was going to do my song and dance, Harold. I know. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. My preference is to be off of this stage, but my new friend Mitch says I can't. So I'm going to be here, and I'm going to try to move around the stage and be as close to you as I possibly can. Again, I'm very honored to be here tonight. My name is Andy Vollmuth. First and foremost, I am a husband to Jody. I have 3 kids. I have an 8th grader, Gus. Julia is a 7th grader, and Grace. And they are they're what consumes me and Jody besides besides work. We're very fortunate to have 3 healthy kids who are involved in many things, and it's the best blessing that I have. And so first and foremost, I am a dad and a significant other husband to Jody. For the past 16 years, I have had the very, very good fortune of being the principal at Normandale Elementary in Bloomington, a very, very high-performing school. In a very, very high-performing school district. And it has been a great place for me. And as I said to the group just before this, today as I drove to work with Grace, my 5th grader, I said, this is the last day in February ever that we're going to be able to go to work together. Because for the last 9 years, my kids have come to school with me, and that's how we have found balance in our busy personal and professional lives, is by kids being part of our school community. So Normandale Hills is important to me from a professional perspective. Bloomington is important to me, but it's also that personal connection, and I think it shows how important family is to me. Prior to Bloomington and Normandale Hills, I had the good fortune of being a principal in the Rochester Public Schools. I had been to Rochester, I think, once before my tenure in Rochester, and I had 3 wonderful years as the principal of Lincoln K-8 Choice School. Lincoln was a very high-performing school district or school community, but unlike Normandale Hills, where there was a strong, entrenched principal, Lincoln was great. We were achieving we had great levels of achievement, but it was organizationally somewhat of a mess. And so my job was to come in and to help bring semblance of order to what could be and what became a very high achieving school community. That gave me the opportunity to work in outstate Minnesota, which I loved. It gave me an opportunity to see both elementary and secondary, which is something that I think is invaluable to who I am and my background. And prior to that, I started my educational career as a teacher in the Minneapolis Public Schools, which was a little bit of a shock to the system because I'm a small-town North Dakota kid. I grew up in rural North Dakota, right outside of Fargo, a small town called Buffalo, if anybody here knows it. I'll buy you a cup of coffee. Mitch, do you really know Buffalo? There we go. I did not go to NDSU, but a lot of my friends and my family are NDSU Bison. After Buffalo, North Dakota, a small town, I grew up on a farm with a mother who was a home ec teacher / fax as it transitioned, and a dad who was a farmer and drove the school bus. And that was just our upbringing. So that deep passion for public education and hard work, I think is really a defining feature of who I am today as a person and as a professional and as a leader. I am a graduate of Concordia College in Moorhead. I did a lot of my graduate work through St. Thomas in the cities. And in addition to Normandale Hills, I get to do lots of really cool things. I'm a part of 2 nonprofit boards, Faith's Lodge, where I'm a part of the board of directors. Faith's Lodge is a place where families who have lost a child or have a child who has a medically complex condition can go and stay in a beautiful facility free. And so I've been honored to serve on the board of Faith's Lodge for the last, 3 or 4 years. I'm also very involved with a place called Oasis for Youth. Oasis for Youth is in Bloomington. It's housed in Bloomington, and it's really the mission of Oasis for Youth is youth homelessness in the suburban setting. And those things are important to me because community is important to me. My small town roots, my background in rural North Dakota is who I am today. It's how I lead and how I hope to lead in New Prague. In addition to those nonprofits, I also have some experiences working at the graduate school setting. I'm lucky enough to work at the University of Minnesota, Concordia, St. Paul, off and on St. Thomas, and my areas of focus there are school finance, which I'm sure I'll talk about throughout the questioning tonight. The principalship, what does it mean to be a principal in the 21st century? Principal as leaders, not just elementary school, but also secondary. What does it mean to be a leader in today's schools? We need leaders in our organizations. So finance, the principalship, I do some work with human resources as part of my study. And lastly, one of the last things I do is it's a class on leadership. And so I think I have a firm understanding of who I am as a leader, which is helpful in an interview process like this, but it's also helpful because what happens, and I see this happening, is when leaders aren't firmly entrenched and don't have an understanding of who they are, is they change when things are difficult. And I will continue to grow and to continue to develop, but I have a pretty good understanding of who I am foundationally and how I will continue to lead, and I hope that my next endeavor is to lead the New Prague area schools. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you very much. And this is an opportunity, this session is an opportunity for the general public in New Prague to get a chance to meet the candidate and ask the candidate some questions. So we'll start right here with our number 1 question.
Hi, I was fortunate enough to start it off yesterday, so I'll just do the same thing for you. Knowing that you come into a school district that's in a community that voted no most recently for the referendum and the levy, what's your plan to determine what would be cut and what would be kept? And how do you plan to get more community buy-in for the district?
We have about 3 hours for that question. There's a lot to that. Obviously, I understand there's 3 things that I'm going to talk to the school board tonight. I don't get to decide the questions that they're going to ask me, but I have 3 themes that I think are going to be important as I've done my understanding of New Prague, and one of them is operationally, and it's passing a referendum. Now, I won't be in that chair at this time to decide what is cut, right? I will trust the administration. As I've said before, when you walk into an organization, and collective bargaining agreements are examples of this, budgets are examples of this. I don't create them, I inherit them. And I believe them to be the best that the citizens, the staff at New Prague can do at that particular time. Are they perfect? No. Do we always want and need more, and should we continue to advocate for more? 100%. That's part of my job, and that's what I will vow to continue to do. But I will trust the professionals who are here to make those decisions. My job will be to work through the difficult part in the grieving process when there's loss, because there's going to be loss, and that equals change, and that becomes challenging, and that's hard for culture. And so part of my job is to not make those decisions at this point in time. And my next part of this response is the operating referendum. But at this point in time, I hope that is a one and done, and we don't have to talk about that again for a long, long, long time. One of the things that I think is really important, and a skill set that I bring to this, is a different approach to operating referendums. All right? So I said that one of my focuses and one of the areas that I want the board, again, I don't get to ask the questions, but so I know there are many board members here, I'll just say those 3 themes are community re-engagement, effectively implementing that strategic plan from the classroom to the boardroom. And the last one is the referendum, that I think that I, again, probably won't, I hopefully have a say and will be able to be a part of some conversations, but I'm guessing much of those discussions will happen prior to, if I'm so fortunate enough to take this job on July 1st. And I will start doing things prior to July 1st because I think that's important. But in Bloomington, I'll share a story about Bloomington, and Bloomington is not perfect. Bloomington has challenges. Bloomington has done some good things, and there's also some things that I would do differently as the leader of the organization. But one of the things that we've done really well over the last 2 referendums, starting in 2017, is we've taken a different approach to these referendums. Instead of them being the work of the superintendent and the school board, we've taken a much more site-based approach. And as a building principal, I didn't love it. Because operating referendums happen at the beginning of the year. It's kind of a busy time for building principals, right? And kind of a busy time for classroom teachers and PTAs and all of those different things. And in 2017, when we first took this new approach, I was the president of our Principals Association, so I needed to convince my 25 other principal colleagues that this was the right work. Because it's a lot of work, but it's the right work. And in previous referendums, we had passed them 51-49 and change, barely. They passed, it didn't matter. Didn't matter what the outcome was, you won the game, move on. But the approach that we took increased in a politically charged climate like this last fall, during that site-based approach, using principals, teachers, community members, enhancing the communication, the flow from the classroom to the community as much as we possibly can, 75-25 in favor of passing that referendum. It's a lot of work, but it is the right work. And so I think it's about the communication. I myself will not pass a referendum, but I think I have a different strategy and a different approach that I think can help in changing the outcome. And that'll be one of my, I'm guessing, primary, I hope that to be one of my primary goals when I start this job. The community re-engagement part, there's strong tradition here. People are here tonight because of your pride in the New Prague area schools, and that's a really good thing. We need to re-engage that. I need to be the chief relationship builder of this organization. And as I've said before, as a building principal, I have been focused on community-based leadership. I cannot sit back in my office and let my school, which is running really well, run itself. I have to be a bridge builder into the community. I have to make connections with faith communities. I have to make connections with business organizations. I have to make connections with government organizations to advocate for our program, advocate for our school district. That same approach will hold true when I hopefully am the superintendent of the New Prague area schools. I need to build connections into the community, those relationships, the communication that happens as a result of that. Communication breeds trust. A lack of communication breeds mistrust. And so we need to over-communicate our why. We need to be specific about what we're asking, and we need to make sure that everybody is saying the same thing. Doesn't mean that everyone's going to love it, and it doesn't mean it's going to there's always going to be a differing opinion. We understand that. We need to be respectful of that. But those are some of the things that I'm thinking about to your question.
Hi, thank you for being here. I appreciate what you had to say about building community, and I think the superintendent position is important to have that person as a member of the community and active in the community. But I'm wondering, as you're living in Bloomington and working in New Prague, and there's basketball games in the evenings, or the plays, or the middle school pop show, you know, that's a lot of driving and a lot of time commitment, and I've done that myself, and I just wanted to see how you plan to handle that.
Well, I was asked a question before about what my biggest fear is, and my biggest fear is not the job. I don't want to sound arrogant, and I don't want to sound like I've got it figured out, because I don't. But I know that in New Prague, there's strong systems and supports. There's good people who are passionate about the program and passionate about the schools, and most importantly, maximizing the academic and social development of all of our students. And so I have a learning curve. I understand that, but I also have really strong people that I will collaborate with on behalf of the mission and values of the organization. I hope tonight that the school board gives me a reason to advance in a conversation with my wife about where we live. I think it's premature for me to have those discussions, partly out of protecting my own kids, right? Because I think that's my job. My first job is to protect my own kids, as I would expect many of you would say. And so those conversations have been had, but this process has been quick and it's been new, right? And so I hope to be able to have those discussions. I can't tell you where my zip code will be on day 1 or day 2 or year 2. I can tell you I will be involved. I am committed to community-based principling, community-based leadership. I will be at football games. I love to go to football games. I cannot wait to stand on the sideline with my New Prague coat and hat and be a part of the New Prague community. I will be at hockey games. I know there's a big hockey game tomorrow night in my old stomping grounds of Rochester. That's important for me to have a presence there. I know the arts are very significant to this community. I will be a part of that, whether my zip code is Bloomington or somewhere else or New Prague. That's my vow to you. That's who I am as a leader. That's what I know. That's how I've grown up. I'm not interested. I'll go to a Timberwolves game or a Vikings game or a Twins game. I'd rather go to a New Prague basketball game. I really, really would. That's who I am. I will never be able to be everywhere that people want me to be, right? There's only one of me. But I promise that my vow to you is that I will be very involved in this community during the school day, outside of the school day, on the weekend when need be. I'm gonna butcher the name, but I know that September 15th and 16th is a really important weekend. I will be here. My family will be here. I probably won't stay till the end, because that's not a good decision for the boss. But I will be a part of that. That is my vow to the people, and that's how I lead. That's who I am as a person and a leader.
I was thinking that exact same thing. And I think the other side to that coin is, do you see any positives or advantages to maybe not living in the community that you serve? Or how would you speak to that?
Yeah, I said this to the administrative team, and I'm authentic. I try to be authentic, and I try to be a man of my word, but I will ask them first and foremost to be husbands, wives, dads, grandparents, all of those things. I would ask for that same respect. Just like I would ask that from you. I think it's advantageous at times when I want to make sure. When I started, I'll give you an example, a specific example. I never thought I'd bring my kids to Normandale Hills. Who would do that? Let them be kids. I don't want them to be a part of this. That's not something, they need to be their own people, right? I made a different decision. I don't make the decisions in my house, by the way. My wife makes the decisions, and I shake my head and say yes. It's worked well for us for close to 20 years. But I find, so if you asked a question, and my response is safety for my kids, protecting kids. I will never let somebody politicize my kids, and I wouldn't bring them into the system until I knew that wasn't, not necessarily in New Prague, we're talking back in Bloomington. I wouldn't bring them into the system until I had those relationships and I knew that they weren't going to be used against me, because they get to be kids. Just like your kids get to be kids, your grandkids get to be kids, so on and so forth. I also understand that being a superintendent is not a 8 to 4, 9 to 5 job. Being a principal is not necessarily an 8 to 4, 9 to 5 job. So we have to, I talked about the burden of leadership before, and being real transparent, my wife said to me this morning, "How'd you sleep?" And I said, not great. But it wasn't because I was nervous. And I mean this, it's because I was excited. I kept thinking about the strategic plan and all the different things, the 4 anchors of that strategic plan, and how I can see myself fitting into those different areas. And I'll talk about them more, I'm sure, when the school board gets their chance to pepper me with some questions. How I can help move the organization forward, the good things that they're already doing, and how my experiences in several different school districts, and also having scans of districts across the state from my work in the graduate school setting, working with principals in training, superintendents in training, and understanding there's districts, can help move New Prague forward. So I think I'm maybe going on a little bit too much here, but I think for safety purposes, in terms of just protecting kids, that could help, but we will be involved. The Vollmuth children will be involved, and I can only tell you, time will tell, but I can only, the best predictors of future behavior are past performance. They're pretty involved now, and they're pretty involved in that community.
Hi. Is this on? Yeah, you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So as parents, we know little children, little problems, big children, big problems, right?
I'm learning that every day with 2 middle schoolers, by the way. I told my wife years ago when she only wanted 2, I said, let's have 3, miracles happen, 3rd came along, that I was just going to start to work a lot more as they moved through. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but yes.
So, your credentials would indicate that your experience is primarily at the K-8 level. And I was wondering if you could speak more specifically, you've kind of touched on it, but if you could speak more specifically to your experience dealing with the issues that sometimes are present at the high school, as well as any experience that you have working at the district level.
Yeah, those are opportunities for growth for me. Those are areas that I don't have district level experience. I've made a decision to keep that balance in my personal and professional life, and so I have not. I don't have those experiences, so that'll be a steep learning curve for me. And I'm going to talk about the district level, then I'll come back to your question about high school. One of the things that I have that I think is advantageous is that I have a really deep network of people that I can rely on. And I don't say that to name drop. I know this person and I know this person, but in preparation for this, I probably talked to, just in the last couple of days since Friday night when my new friend Harold called me and said, hey, what are you doing on Tuesday? I probably talked to close to 10 seated superintendents, former superintendents, people that I will rely on when I hope this transition happens, right? And those are people who worked in the metro, those are people who worked outstate, those are people who have worked in large districts, smaller districts, rural districts like this, so that I understand what a 4,000 person system is really all about. Because I've worked in Minneapolis, Rochester. Minneapolis was 30,000, Rochester was 16 plus, 10,000-ish in Bloomington, and now 4,000 plus here. And so that network is really important to me, those people that will help with the transition, in addition to creating relationships with what is already a very, very strong administrative team. There are great principals in this organization. There are great district leaders. So I recognize the burden of leadership that during the transition, it's about me. And I know that I need to use my presence and my positional authority to help pass a referendum from day one. I get it. If that's what the board chooses to do, I don't tell them what to do, right? Especially when I'm not even an employee of the organization yet. But I think that's coming to a theater near all of us soon. Some of those relationships are good in the transition. They're also good at sustaining, right? future leaders who we need to move into the system. Not that we have to bring people from the outside. I think it's a balance of people from the inside and people from the outside. I think those things are critical. So that to me is, there's obviously a steep learning curve, but that's exciting to me. And the different things that I have done in Bloomington have helped prepare me. I am a chief negotiator for our principal group. I've been a part of rethinking how we do hiring, both in Rochester when I was there and also in Bloomington. I think I talked about the referendum and the work that I do to not just be a part of that, but to lead my principal colleagues and district level staff through that. I don't take credit for any of it, but I was a part of it. And so my scan, I think, is different than that of a principal. I think I have a district level scan, and my district level friends would say, oh, just wait, there's things coming. And they're right, but it won't just be me, it'll be me working in collaboration with others, and I'm confident that there's a strong team. With regards to elementary, secondary, I've not been a high school principal. I can't tell you I was. I can't make an excuse and to say why I'm not. But I firmly believe in the people that I trust and the people that are in that network. And I believe in the same belief, leaders are leaders. This isn't about managing a building, it's about leading. And I believe, I firmly believe that the best leaders transcend environments. Now, is there a learning curve? Absolutely. There's an absolute learning curve when you go from one to the other, but the mentality that you bring to the work. I talk about being a visionary leader who works to maximize the potential within an organization through creating a culture, a collaborative culture of empowerment and continuous improvement. That wouldn't change if I was the principal at Jefferson High School. That won't change when hopefully, I hope I don't have to continue to say hopefully, but when hopefully I become the next superintendent of the new Prague area schools, because it's fundamentally and foundationally who I am as the principal leader at Normandale Hills. So I hope that answers your question.
Hi, Andy. Thank you. I think your leadership is great. You sound good. Very, very impressed with what I'm hearing so far. I am just an average parent. I'm surrounded by a bunch of educators. All right. I am not in this profession, but our school district does have some really, really great teachers. And I've been beneficial and benefited to have 3 daughters go through the system with straight A's. All right. They've done very well. However, there is an issue I'd like to bring up with you, and it regards leadership at the high school level. Can you please speak to how you'll help to improve the lack of acknowledging a senior's grades in the second semester when determining if they graduate with distinction or high distinction? Right now, their second semester grades do not matter at all because of policies that are very outdated. Did you know data travels on average over 600,000 miles per hour or at the speed of light? It's 2023, computers are everywhere, but old policies based on U.S. mail and faxes are still in full force at New Prague. And it's harming our children from succeeding. The board and the principal at the high school seem to hide behind the phrase, at least to me, there is nothing we can do because this is how it's done. All right? If these old policies are allowed to stay in place, meaning the school does not really care about a child's final semester grades, then why should any student, my student, care what their final semester grades would be? Could you please speak to how you will bring this district into 2023, if selected, so it benefits every child that rightfully earned distinction or high distinction? Please try to be specific as possible.
That was a lot to that question for me to be specific, I have to be honest with you. And I think I heard most of it, it was somewhat muffled. And I can't be specific to it because I don't have enough context. I need to understand more. But what I think you're asking is, And so maybe Harold, if you want to give the gentleman the microphone back. If I can paraphrase, you're concerned with outdated policies that are affecting your daughter's ability to, policies and practices that are affecting your daughter's ability to graduate with distinction.
All right, and this one is done and over. It's more so my last daughter making it through. How can you help to make changes at the high school so we're not relying on fax machines, US mail? We can get data very, very fast. My daughter should have graduated with distinction. She did, but it was never acknowledged. But what can you do to help change this at the high school level, not just for my daughter, but for all the children that have earned it? Technology is moving very fast. We get data very fast, and it's really hard for a parent to listen to a principal say, this is how it's been done. We have to wait for this and this and this. How can you help speed this up?
I can't get specific because, again, I don't have all the information, so I will say this. The answers of tomorrow don't mean they're the answers today, and something that probably I don't accept and won't accept is this is just the way we've done it here. So when I talked earlier about, I sometimes feel I'm being redundant, but I think this is an important point, and you guys are just getting to know me, is a visionary leader who works collaboratively to create a culture of continuous improvement, a collaborative culture based on empowerment and continuous improvement. So what I hear and my vow to you is I don't know if I'll be able to unpack all that is a part of your question, but what I will say is that just because we've done it this way isn't an acceptable answer to how we're going to approach the future, and there will be a culture that is created and I think it's still here, but it'll be enhanced in terms of continuous improvement. And how are we making sure that this system is responsive to the needs of students and families? And so one of the things that I don't want to steal my thunder because this is a part of my final, hey, this is why you should hire me, is I think I have a really good background in instruction. And I think instruction transcends grade level. I really, really do. I also think my experiences, my background, my who I am, operationally, I have some really good things in my toolkit that I can help bring to. I'm hearing a theme of modernizing information structures. I don't know if that's fair, but I have background experience in Bloomington and other places larger districts who have done some really good things with regard to information structures. And I think that is something actually that's in year 2 or 1 or 2 of the strategic plan. And so I can tell you this, I won't always make you happy, but I'll listen to you. And I'll ask the questions of the professionals to say, what can we do in this situation? And if the response is, well, that's just always the way we've done it, I'll ask them to think about what else we could do. And if there's something else we can do, maybe I can't change it for your particular situation, and it sounds like we can't. But if we can change it and make it better for people who are coming in the future, that will be my vow to you and to the community. Thank you.
Okay, next question, anyone?
I get nervous when I have a mic in my hand because I don't sing at church, because I don't sing very well, and I'm certainly not going to sing here, but I feel like I should do something while I'm waiting to pass the time. But I won't.
So there is local discussion concerning curriculum, and there are some people who prefer to eliminate diversity training or Black history, more a back to the basics approach, and others prefer to keep and expand upon a more inclusive curriculum. So I'm curious, what is your philosophy on this topic?
When I think of New Prague, I think of, again, I go back to I'm building upon other things, and I hope this will help give you some context, right? And I feel like my principal friends who have been in the back, Mr. Boothie, have heard this multiple times, so I think it's a little bit redundant, but I go back to what makes this job really enticing is the proud tradition that exists. People love their schools here. People are passionate about their schools, and my vow and my goal is to match that enthusiasm for the schools. But just like the answer I just gave, the answers of tomorrow aren't necessarily the answers for today. And so we need to think about how we are welcoming of all of our students. All means all. I've done a lot of research, and I need to do more, and I need to do a lot of learning. But I know that I hope my new bosses, 2 of them just took their oath a couple months ago, right? And I'm not going to articulate it as clearly, but that oath says that they are responsible for all students in New Prague. So am I. Doesn't matter what they look like, doesn't matter their socioeconomic status, their race, ethnicity, so on and so forth. We need to make sure that we are welcoming spaces for all students and their families and staff. And I believe firmly, as a small town kid who did not have experiences in racial diversity and not a lot of socioeconomic diversity, that we are enriched when we are able to learn and live and function and with others who maybe aren't like us. And so that question, I think there's a lot more to it in terms of what that approach is like. But I do believe that we need to present other views, and we need to think about how we are making sure that all of our students feel welcomed, all of our students feel safe, and that they're getting a different perspective at times. But that doesn't mean that we are lowering the expectations for anyone. That means that we are welcoming everyone to this community and making sure that they all feel like they are part of the New Prague area schools.
My question is based on career and technical education. In years past, career and technical education kind of been put on the wayside, put behind the scenes, even gotten rid of in some school districts. And now we're seeing that upturn back again, that these school districts are second guessing those decisions now. What's your philosophy on the direction of career and technical education in our school district here at New Prague?
Yeah, I'd tie this on to my question about maybe not having all the information about like high schools, right? But in Bloomington, I'll use my example, and you know, I don't take credit for this, but I've been a part of this and watched others do this as we've transformed our offerings into academies and different things to prepare students for the jobs of the future that maybe we haven't prepared students before in the past. And the trades are a critical piece in that. I had the very good fortune of working for some very progressive, forward-thinking superintendents who have reminded us that we need to change. We need to change. We need to continually improve our offerings at the secondary level to prepare students for what is there. I hope my kids go to college. I hope they graduate from college. I hope they do it soon and quick so that I don't have to pay for it for a long term. But colleges and a 4-year degree isn't necessarily the answer for all students anymore. And we have stats and we have different things that we can look at that show that a 4-year degree maybe isn't the answer. So if that is the case, then we need to be thinking in our secondary schools, what are we offering and how are we changing what we have traditionally done to prepare students for a workforce that is vastly different than what we have prepared them for even a decade ago. And I believe that is something, those are some experiences and expertise that I can help bring to that and help that, again, with that mindset of continuous improvement and empowering staff to change on behalf of where our students are going is something that I think is really critical.
Another question from anyone?
It's fine.
I know,
Yeah.
so I write it all down because I'm like, this freaks me out, like, so anyway. So
I was worried you were taking notes about everything I was saying, and then we're going to like hold me to every one of these
No,
things.
not at
So
all.
I'm good. I'm
No,
glad it's
not
not
at all.
the case.
Not at all. So I'm a person of faith as well, and I noticed that on the synopsis that you disclose that you are also active in your church and as a person of faith. How does that fit into you being a superintendent? And what does it mean for students who don't agree with what your faith might be or believe in God or anything like that in general? Just because you mentioned it and you disclosed it. I was just curious about how, because it's super, yeah.
My faith is important to me. I won't hide from that. I don't think it's my job to take my faith and share that throughout the school system. I think there's still a separation of church and state, and I think you need to be respectful of that. I do think that we have, in even my 20 years as being a building principal, blurred the lines on how we work together with faith communities to help meet the needs of our students. So for example, I have the very, very good fortune of partnering with a church in Bloomington, and their pastor and I meet on a regular basis. And I think it's appropriate and fair, and I think we should, because both of us have the same mentality that we need to see our organizations outside the four walls that are currently there. If Pastor Pat, St. Michael's Lutheran, waits for people to come to his congregation, he's going to lose. Things have changed. People aren't going to church. I don't like that. It bothers me. It makes me nervous. But we can't wait. And in schools, we can't wait anymore. We have to think about, I had a question earlier about early childhood education, and I'm proud of the work that we've done at Normandale Hills and in Bloomington to bring those programs into our schools, to make them feel connected, because we can't wait, right? And so during my time in Bloomington, one of the things I talked about last Friday is we've been very active in our, and this was pre-COVID, and so we're trying to build some of these things back up. But we've invited every faith community to meet with our principals, and we've tried to make intentional connections between those faith communities and our schools. Not because they're coming in to share about their faith, but we have the same mission: serving students, serving families, and I think that we can all get together around that, right? And so I'm proud that we've done that. And our partnership at Normandale Hills is alive and well, from financial support for something called Every Meal, which is a weekend food program for students who don't have those resources, to a guide dog coming into school, to meeting with students, to during COVID when things were going on and I knew a family needed support, I'd call Pastor Pat and say, I need some gift cards for this family. There's a funny story I'll tell you at another time about this. And he'd say, what do you need and how much? Meet me at the holiday station. Nobody knows that, but that's important to those families. That's important because we have a common goal. It's serving students, it's serving families, and I can get behind that. So my faith is important to me. It shapes who I am. I think I'm a man of my word. I think my family, I think you've seen that as a part of who I am, will be a part of this process. And so I don't go out and talk about my faith on a regular basis at work, because I do think you have to be respectful of that. Not everyone shares those same values, but it defines who I am and how I lead. And I will never compromise that.
And then just a follow-up to that of, for the kids who are agnostic or complete non-believers, or, just the unchurched,
So if I could paraphrase, what do we do if people don't believe?
Right, well,
Yeah.
just how is your relationship any different with those kids compared to that? Does that make sense?
It does, and I don't know if I can oversimplify this, but I was asked a question earlier about my views on equity, and my response was, and it was a much more well-worded and thoughtful question than just equity, but my response is all. What does equity mean to me? And my response is all. We don't decide who walks through the door. We don't get to decide if because they're a believer or a non-believer, or because their mom or dad might be on the school board, or grandma, or whatever it might be, if we're going to be supportive of them. Their socioeconomic status, the color of their skin, all means all. It's kind of a non-negotiable for me. And so I would treat them just the same as I would treat anyone else. And I would. That would just be how I approach this, and I would expect that of others, because that all means all.
Anyone else? Other questions? I think this was ready.
You, earlier you touched on the fact that you have a pretty good network already in place. And I think networking is really important as an educator. My question for you is, are you currently involved in any professional, educational related organizations, and if so, to what extent? And what are the methods that you might use to keep yourself and our school board current on important matters?
Yeah, I just saw two of my principal colleagues walk out the door. I think they have kindergarten registration tonight, so that's pretty important. And so I'm very involved in the Minnesota Elementary School Principals Association. That is very important to me. And when I remind people of why that is important, I remind them of two things: networking and professional development. And so when I think of the networks that are to come, I think it's okay to be involved and continue to be involved, like things like Minnesota Elementary Principals, Minnesota Secondary School Principals Association, but also the School Boards Association. I have some relationships within the School Board Association, and I think it's important, I know it's important to be a part of those professional organizations. You know, I have some things that my staff is tired of me saying, because I've said them for 16 years. And one is that when the adults are learning in the organization, so too will the kids. And school improvement is not about improving kids. It's about improving us. And as the principal, that starts with me. As the superintendent, that starts with me. And so I go back to that mission statement that I have. I didn't create this for this just now. I've created it years ago in preparation of really having a foundational understanding of who I am. Visionary leader who works to maximize the potential by collaborating, creating a culture of, you're sick of me saying it, and you're sick of me saying it. I'm sick of saying it, and you're sick of me hearing it. But a visionary leader who works to maximize the potential by creating a collaborative culture of empowerment and continuous improvement. I have to be learning. I have to be learning. People ask me, why do you want to leave being a principal when things are going really well, you're happy, you've got a good thing? Because I want to continue to learn. I need to continue to learn. That's why I am so involved with the graduate school, and I'm so thankful for those opportunities. I get to share some knowledge, but I learn more about myself and learn from others as a part of that work. So I'm committed to learning, and learning happens through my network. It also happens through being very involved with nonprofits, right? So I learn a different perspective on finance from my work at Oasis for Youth, Faith's Lodge. But again, learning will be is foundational to who I am.
Time for one more question, and we'll give him a chance to make a few closing comments. Or we let him start sooner. Okay? If there aren't any questions, go ahead. You want to add a few thoughts?
Again, I hope things turn in my favor tonight, and if they do, I will be humbled. And I'll be humbled. It's not about me. Tonight is about me. I don't ever want it to be about me. I also recognize that at times this needs to be about me. And I respect the burden of leadership. Things I want you to continue to think about me in terms of who I am as a leader. That I described, or when I looked at this job, and I don't just throw my hat in any job. That's not who I am. I have a very long list of criteria, and this job met most, if not all, of those criteria. And so I think about alignment of who this organization is, the great things that have happened up until now, and can I see myself as a part of that organization? Can I fit within that organization? And also, can I help move the organization forward? I'm not here to just keep the seat warm. I really want to improve this organization. And I feel confident that I can do those things, and working in collaboration with the school board, with the administrative staff, and with the community. So I think about fit, and the thing that hit me, and I said this too often last week, is it's the new Prague way, and it is about showing excellence. Now I'm gonna blank on it. It is about doing what's right, committing to excellence, and making people know that you care. And the thing that I continue to come back to is that student-centered approach, that student-first approach. It's the first bullet under doing what is right. And that has worked for me really well over the last 20 years. It's not always perfect, but I find clarity of purpose in knowing that I'm gonna do what's right, I'm gonna make decisions, I hope they're the best decisions with what is right for the children at Normandale Hills, Bloomington, and again, I hope to make this new Prague. So I see alignment. I've furthered my belief that there's alignment because one of the things that I've done over the last couple of days is really dug into that updated strategic plan. And I think I have a firm understanding of the TeamWorks process. I had a long conversation with a TeamWorks member yesterday. They're the third party that helped in creating that plan. And I see things that resonate with what I thought needed to happen in New Prague, but also areas where I can help bring my experiences to make this a better school district. And it's already a great school district. So I think there's that alignment. The things that I'd ask for you to continue to think about me is that I have in my toolkit, I think I have a really good understanding of instructional pedagogy. And that's where the magic happens, in the classroom. The classroom is a sacred space. We need to make sure that teaching and learning is first and foremost what happens in our classrooms, and it's our job as the leaders to make sure that that is a sacred space and that learning is the expectation for all students. And I understand how to use professional development to help align the system. Professional development can help align if done well. It also can help make disjoint a system. And by taking a less is more approach, I believe that I can help align the system. The question is this guy hasn't done this job. He hasn't been a secondary school principal. He hasn't worked at the district office. But I think I'd ask you to think about my experiences of the operational side of this work. Through collective bargaining, through working with human resources, through passing a referendum and helping pass 2 different referendums with an updated and new approach that I think can help benefit the New Prague area schools. And so I think about those things. I think about the networks. I talked about those. I also think about, forgive me for a second, that this is a big job. The expectations are really high. And there will be difficult days. There will be challenges. But I'm excited about those challenges. I'm ready for those challenges. So the burden of leadership is not something that makes me nervous. It's something that I'm running towards. I'm excited about. I think I can help move this organization forward. And so that burden of leadership is important to me, and it's important to my family. My kids know me. They've only ever known me as a school leader. That's who we are. That's how we do business. We get it. We don't always love it, but they understand, my wife understands the burden of leadership. And the last thing that I'd ask for you to think about is, and this is hard to quantify, but if you talk to people who know me well, Dr. Melby, who's my current superintendent, Sherry Allen, who used to be the superintendent down in Mankato, Rick Dressen, who's the superintendent in Edina, people who know me at the site level, they say that I have a knack of bringing people together towards a common goal, to create synergy around an initiative, whether that be instructional technology, whether that be standards-based grading, whether that be passing a referendum, that my approach helps. It's not just me, but it helps in creating a synergy around clarity of purpose. What are we trying to accomplish? And I give a lot of credit to that, to my rural North Dakota farm kid roots. That's who I am. I understand this work. It excites me. It makes me passionate to help this organization move forward. And I am very excited about the opportunity. I thank everyone for being here. And regardless, Be proud of your wonderful schools. Be proud of your wonderful community. And my hope is that I'm able to have an impact on that starting on July 1st. So thank you very much.